So I'm going to record this episode, and I'm not entirely sure yet if and or when I will post it. You know, they say that the problem with people who are really intelligent is that they are super, like they doubt themselves, right? They're just not as confident as people who clearly are wrong. And I have to say that I would agree with that. You know, part of my biggest issue, it's on one end, right? Everything comes with its shadow, right? So on one end, the ability to sort of see things that people, don't always see. I consider that a sort of a well-honed gift, and for which I'm grateful for. But of course, like the other edge of the sword is that then you go to speak on it, but then you are sort of crippled with all of these thoughts of, okay, well, what will people think? And that within itself is so debilitating. And it's such a stupid thing to debilitate a person. Who fucking cares? Should be the answer. Why does it matter? Right? Most people maybe think about you for a second. Yeah, and then they go about their shitty little lives. All right. And I guess I should start by saying this. I have put out a lot of podcast episodes, and for the most part, they have been genuinely and generally positive. But of course, every light casts a shadow. And I have to understand, and I guess you do too, as a listener, understand that it's okay that every once in a while you dip, that you drop. A couple of people stopped by my live. I did a TikTok live yesterday, sort of a live speaking on the TikTok app. And I sort of was going down this path of, hey, I'm having an existential sort of dread kind of moment. But I'm putting on a big smile about it, despite the fact that I'm looking around at everything that's going on in this world and I'm not okay with it, right? And then I stopped myself. And I stopped myself because I realized, holy shit, there's like thousands of people that are going to be popping in and out of this. Is this right? Should you be doing this? Should you be saying this? And while on one end, I'm grateful that I have that filter, and I did pause and I talked to people and I said, hey, listen, this is going to get a little dark. And if it's, you guys are the audience, I can clearly just keep this shit to myself. But if it's getting a little heavy for you guys, let me know and we can talk about Marvel or something else, And it was interesting because the audience, the majority of people in the audience were like, no, please carry on because what you're talking about is real, And I was grateful for that. I'm grateful for that audience, right? We live in a gilded world. I don't want to say cage. Okay, I've said it. We live in a gilded cage, and it's not even that gilded because we can kind of look around and see that it's not quite what we've been sold, right? Like as a child, you are programmed to perceive reality in one particular way, but what you have been sold as you get older, you realize, holy shit, this is literally programming. Everything is programming. And so everything that you've come to sort of understand and accept as what this nature of our reality is, and, morals and, what is right and wrong, and like, oh yes, the good guys are really in charge, and if you work really hard, you'll make it, and all of this stuff. Like the older you get, the more you start to realize, like, these were all lies. And on one end, there is a temptation as you make these observations to sort of just keep the peace, yeah? Like you see these things happening, but you don't want to speak on it, right? Because we have been sort of programmed that if anybody sort of deviates from this idea of just nodding your head, like, everything is fine, and it's all kumbaya and, it'll all work itself out. And all you need to do is just work a little bit harder and X, Y, and Z. If you say anything that kind of contradicts that, you have these people who it seems their primary function is literally just to attack anyone who maybe does not think the way the status quo, needs you to think. Yeah. So I have said this, I think about a year or so ago. I said, you can be a clone without being like a biological clone, right? There's something to be said about mental clones, right? Like you can be a psychological clone. You can be a person who essentially just thinks like everybody else. I mean, that kind of goes without saying, it's a bit obvious, but think about it deeply, right? If you have an opinion, yeah, and that opinion dares sort of go against what the majority of people feel, think, or believe, there is an opportunity there for, and maybe an opportunity is the wrong choice of words, but there is a huge chance that you will sort of catch a lot of heat for it. But here's the point. I can't help having these thoughts. And I would like to think that the reason why the podcast is doing as well as it is that there are people who, maybe not a huge amount of people, but absolutely a pretty substantial amount of people who feel the same way and have just been quiet. On one end, it's like, I get it. On the opposite end, I don't know if the best possible choice is to sit silently about this and not speak, because what ends up happening, guys, is that you have people like you, people like me, right? If you're listening to this, if you're a regular subscriber on the podcast, like clearly you relate to the things that you've heard me say. And not that you believe 100% everything that I say. I don't expect you to, but on some level you recognize and you feel a sort of sense of like kindred sort of spirits that I sort of exist in a space where it's like I want to think freely. And that resonates with you because you're in that mental space. But if you kind of keep quiet, yeah, if you go along to get along, I'm not saying turn everything into a fucking battle, right? I don't know if that's necessarily the answer either, but if you're silent, then people who are like you can't find you. And more importantly, people who are like you think they're alone. So the one thing that I keep hearing from people when they reach out and send messages and things like that is, you make me feel as though I'm not crazy, right? That I'm not alone. I have felt, because the people around me, when I say these sort of things, it's not to say that, they believe wholeheartedly, even in the sort of the suppositions that they make. But gosh, to just have a particular thought, right? And then try to talk to somebody that's in a sort of a close by vicinity to you, maybe like a family member or whatever, and to be met with like these looks, these blank stares. Well, if the people around you aren't saying the same thing that you're saying, and then there's really not that many people out, in the media who are saying or thinking what you're thinking, then you do start to feel isolated and alone. But the problem is that you're not alone. The problem is that people like you are sort of like quiet. So then you have what's going on. It's like, look at our society and think about the things that do get elevated. Think about the things that do get amplified. No offense against the Kardashians, but they're not talking about things that really challenge the status quo or make you sort of think about life beyond this life or life before this life, right? So the voices that are while you're staying quiet, the voices that are being amplified are the voices of people who are saying the most ridiculous things, but because there's so many people saying similarly ridiculous things and doing similarly ridiculous things, most people like you and I just think, okay, I guess that's quote normal. But normality is an illusion within itself, right? It takes a collective to, like, I should say, it takes a group of people to collectively agree on what, is normal and what isn't. But the way that we're living, even in the way that we're told is normal, I don't think it is. And so I'm saying all of that to say that this episode is going to be one of those episodes that, it's one of those few episodes that kind of deviate from my normal episodes, where it's not going to be really critical. It is just me going to be pausing and reflecting and then challenging particular sort of ideologies and mindsets, right? And it's not, it's going to come off maybe as cynical. And I think the best way to deliver this would have been like a George Carlin sort of thing. Like, you say it, but you say it in jest, right? So that when people hear it, they can get the information, but they're not defensive. But the information is still there. And then you can, at the very least, put like a shield up and say, okay, well, I was just joking. It was just a joke, and that's intelligent. It's just, at this point in time, I don't feel like being funny. I just feel like being real. One of the things I started to talk about on my live yesterday is that there's this deep undercurrents of unhappiness, right? So in the short time that my TikTok has been live, I only started a TikTok this year, I think in February. But I've learned a lot, and I do try to read through a lot of the comments just to get a general idea, an understanding of the masses of people and the emotions and how they feel. And I mean, it's sad, but a lot of my videos that I put out, they're also meant to sort of like gauge the audience and their thoughts. And there's a lot of people who, if the world were to end like today, if they turn on the TV and the news was saying there's a comet heading towards us, we're all going to die, I feel as though there is a large amount of people who would be perfectly okay with that. Why aren't we talking more about that? That is, I don't want to say it's a problem, but that is something that maybe we should be paying more attention to than whatever the fuck people are doing or talking about these days. I don't know, like the Olympics or something, is that still going on? I feel like the fact that most people, have this sort of deep sense of like nihilism, and they're just like, if the world were to end, I don't give a shit, because I hate life. And when I said shitty lives, it's not even like a condescension. It's more of a reflection on everything, right? Because collectively, I'm not going to sit here and say I don't like my life, but the reason why I like my life is because in the back of my mind, I know shit could be fucking worse, right? So it's almost like you're forced, and this is not me complaining. It's just, you have this sort of deep sense of like dissatisfaction with the state of the world and the state of like just you as an adult and what you wanted to do, right, as a child, and how you perceived reality as being. And then as you get older, you start to realize, holy shit, I've been fucking lied to. But then can you really complain? Does that make sense? Because when you go and complain, then you get people saying, oh, it could be worse, right? What do you have to complain about? You have a roof over your over your head, and food in the fridge. So then you take that shit and you shove it in. Yeah? And I think that that's why a lot of people, for example, in the West do feel unhappy, right? Because even though, yes, we are, we're sort of dealing with like what's happening in the world right now, and people are pushing for like socialism, and people are saying we need more, better wages and things of that nature. But we are in the West living better than, I think, and I say better in quotes, but we're living better than like a large majority of human beings, right? If you have clothes to wear and shoes to wear and running water and clean water, food on demand, entertainment on demand, like climate controlled homes, You're not getting like, just, you don't have to fear when you're asleep and things of that nature. You're actually doing really well comparatively to the rest of the world. And it's one of those situations, right? It reminds me of like a person who, let's say you're like a millionaire, right? Or a famous actor, right? And these people, like, kind of every once in a while, they'll like have a mental breakdown, okay? But you can kind of see what leads up to the mental breakdown. Like, you can see shit happening. But then there's this, like, once again, this underlining sense of, well, I have everything that most people would want, myself included, right? I should not be complaining. And I don't know if that's fair. I don't know if that's okay, right? I don't know if you are a multi-millionaire, but you still feel like my life is shitty, right? Or if you are super successful at everything that you have wanted to do in life, right? You're not supposed to feel this sense of, oh man, like something isn't right. I'm not okay. You're not allowed to talk about that. And I think that that's largely what is happening in the West, and I feel like there are other people in other countries looking at us and going and saying things like, what do you have to complain about? Why are you complaining? If you came to live where we live, like, you would see, like, you have it easy. But my thing is, like, that's not fair. Just because I'm doing better than you on a material level, right? Or we are doing better than you materialistically, right? To not be able to just like say, okay, but I feel like shit right now. And maybe I'm not happy with the way things are going in my life. And I don't know why I feel this way, is what causes a lot of people to end up committing, when it seems like they're at the top of their game. So when I'm talking and I'm saying, sometimes I deal with depression, and you have people saying like, it's okay, just smile, like it's okay, like you just pick yourself up, and just, do you meditate? Do you, like all of these things that people like throw at you, because it's like, you're not ever, especially if you are, in a particular demographic, or you live in a particular place, or whatever it is, that whatever reasons that people feel like you can't be a fucking human being with like feelings and negative emotions, they'll throw at you. Well, just try this. Like, don't feel this way. And I said in my live, I said, guys, like, this is toxic. And I know that's like the word, of the day, where everything's toxic. But I just say that for lack of a better word. Like, I don't want to meditate right now. Yes, I do meditate. I don't feel like doing it right now because I'm looking around and there's some shit going on. It's not even just looking around. I've also been feeling some type of way. Why can't we just acknowledge that? Why aren't we allowed to? And to me, I say that that's another level of imprisonment, right? Another limitation that is imposed on us, that we impose on ourselves. That shit's not fucking healthy. No matter how great your life is going, you should still be allowed. So I'm not saying complain, right? Because obviously when you complain about situations, you actually make yourself feel worse, right? And that's actually a good habit, is sitting and writing all the things out. But sometimes some things are energetic. I'll say that again. Sometimes some feelings are energetic. Like, you're picking up something, and regardless of what's happening, at least on a material level, you are picking up something energetically. And if you take that shit and repress it, it's not going to go anywhere. It's just going to pop up again and again and again until you like sit and look at that and observe it. Stop repressing shit. It's not you feel a particular way and then people say to you, or you say to yourself, well, I shouldn't feel this way. Well, you do feel this way. Should or should not does not matter. If that's how you feel at that present moment, you feel this way. And that's okay. And that's okay. Not every ailment needs, like a cure. Sometimes you just need rest. Right? Sometimes you just need peace. Sometimes you just need to take a break. Sometimes you just need to, whatever it is. Or sometimes you just need to sit with that feeling. I've said sometimes, like even like Hawaii, it's paradise, a beautiful place. But sometimes it rains. Now, of course, we're at this moment in time now where we can modify the weather. I mean, we've been there for a while, but would it make sense to go into Hawaii and go, no, we cannot have this. This is supposed to be paradise. Stop it from raining. Well, doing that will make it so that it's no longer paradise. We have everything that most people in other parts of the world aspire to be, and yet we're still feeling some type of way. And I had, like I said, a couple of people say, well, if you weren't living paycheck to paycheck, my response to that is, listen, even if you weren't living paycheck to paycheck, even if you were to win the lottery right now, if you were a billionaire, you would still feel some type of way, right? It's not that money doesn't make you happy. That's not what I'm saying. In fact, money, if I gave you, every listener right now listening to this, and I said, listen, $1 million to everybody, all right, you will be fucking happy. Like, you're not going to get $1 million and then be like, boo, right? You will be happy. The problem is that, for better or worse, that happiness is not sustainable, right? So this is what I said on the live yesterday, and I will post live. I probably, at the time of this post, I probably have already posted it. But what I said was, happiness is attainable, but it's not sustainable, right? Everything is fleeting. But even sadness is fleeting. I'm not saying wallow in the sadness, wallow in the depression, but sometimes you kind of just gotta let stuff be. So there's one thing. I am 99% of the time like a, positive person. When I post a video and it goes, viral and things like that, you get people who aren't typically following you. And it's typically, like, I can tell when a video's going viral because the amount of people that comment, the type of comments I get are different. It's usually, there's a lot of really cool comments, but you get a lot more trollish comments because you're sending your video to just everyone and anyone. It's not like more people who had seen your stuff and it's like a nuanced sort of a niche thing. And so you'll see more of that. And when that happens, it's like, it's cool. Like, okay, I'm glad this video is going viral, but I need to be psychologically prepared for like the trolls and the bullshit criticizing without knowing what the fuck they're talking about, or just assuming, that they know what they're talking about and that you don't, right? And normally I'm really good about that. Most of the time I just delete people or block them or whatever. But then the last week, I've been off. I have been off. I've been going off on people, and I normally don't. And I know in my mind, it's not worth it. You cannot argue with this person. They don't want to get your point. The way you sat down and you eloquated this, right, and you wrote it out, they cannot produce what you're saying, right? 10 times out of 10, when you go to their page, they have no videos. They haven't created anything, and yet they feel like they have the audacity to kind of come through and attack and criticize. right? And you know that on level, like, it's not worth you responding to. And like I said, 99% of the time, I don't. But this past week, I have been. And I was like fighting with that. And like fighting, like, Joe, like, stop going off on these people. Like, it's not worth it. It's not worth your time. You're not going to be able to convince them by arguing. Like, just delete it and keep it moving. But for whatever reason, it was like I lost control of my ego. And that's when it hit me, like, stop. And not stop, like, responding to people. Stop trying to control that. Pause and realize that whatever it is you're going through right now, like, you're kind of almost making it worse by, like, denying how you feel. Sit and be aware of it. And, like, go through this logically, all right? And when I did that, it was better than just me trying to, like, say, okay, well, I'm supposed to be positive, and, you know, this is how you're supposed to react in the situation, and you just have to, like, be, you know, more conscious, more aware, and check your ego and all of that. Like, no, I stopped trying to, like, deny how I felt in that moment, and just was like, you know what? I'm going to indulge this. Because understand that this is really how life works. I have spent a long time, I think is what it is. I spent a long time on a particular path of like, I don't want to say righteousness, but trying to be more, you know, conscious, more aware, right? But eventually it's like you're pulling a rubber band. Eventually it if you let go, it does sort of snap, right? So you don't want to pull it too tight to the opposite direction where you let go and it snaps. You do have to, every once in a while, relax a little, let the ego vent, let yourself be. If you're unhappy in the moment, be unhappy in the moment. I'm not saying wallow in it, but understand that sometimes rain is going to fall. And oftentimes what I've said is when you're going through something negative, it's usually because something positive, right, is on the horizon, right? So there's a quote that I said that the gods, you know, there is no good that the gods do not sell us at the cost of some evil, right? This is a Stoic quote, which basically means that, like, everything good that you get in life, you pay for with a little bit of suffering, right? So case in point, you know, okay, like, your video is going viral and here's a bunch of, like, you know, bullshit, right? So that's just life. That's just how it is. Just accept it. Own it. Like, sit in that. There's something to be said about sitting in a space, like, where you're just like, I'm not in control here. And that's okay. Even sometimes with my ego. Look, most of the time, I can control my ego. Most of the time, I can control my temper. The last few days, week, I have not been, I've had about an 85% hold on the reins of my ego. I don't know what it is. I don't know if the moon's fucking up. I don't know what Mercury is doing. I don't know enough about this stuff, but I have not quite felt in control of myself. And I don't know if just energetically speaking, like, something's off and I'm just picking up on that. But to just be like, okay, that's what's happening right now, has proven to be more effective for me than, like, trying to, on top of everything, fight myself as well. So some people are just going to get cussed out, and that's okay. I don't know if it's fair for people, or for me even, to accept this, like, behavior expectation. I think when you talk about things like consciousness, when you talk about things like ego, when you talk about things like meditation, people tend to project this, like, saintly, like, expectation of you, right? And it's like, bro, like, literally the definition of enlightenment is just knowing, being aware of the fact that the true nature of this reality, like, it's a false construct. That's it. What you do with that information, what you more importantly can do with that information, is more important than like being this person that you think you have to be, or playing this role that you think you have to play of what it must be to be an enlightened person. Because even in the act of you trying to play a role, you're still kind of caught in the illusion of it all. Does that make sense? Golly. Does that make sense? I'm dropping shit here. So allow yourself the freedom, right, to not oppress yourself. Some people deserve to be cussed out. Some people deserve to get blocked. And I'm not to say that you don't have compassion for people, but in that moment, like, you can have compassion for people and still defend yourself. And there's this other thing where people can go, okay, well, like, but there's nothing to defend. You know, the ego is a construct. I get all of that, but it's all a construct. And if you're not at that point in your life where you can obviously do that effectively, where people saying things to you does not affect you, then you're not at that point. And you can't then force yourself, because you will hurt yourself, to do things before you are able to, or when you're not able to. Does that make sense? If I decide, like, okay, let's just say I'm, a seasoned hiker, but then, like, I don't know, it's just, I went out, right? Or something happened and all of a sudden, like, I'm not quite myself. And I can feel that I'm not quite myself, right? Does it make sense to just go and hike 4 or 5 miles? No, you're going to hurt yourself, right? So to be able to sit with that and go, you know what? Like, I'm not feeling myself. I need to take a break. I need to rest until I am myself is more important. And maybe that's what maybe that's what is going on here. Because like yesterday, I was like putting away, like, I was like cleaning the kitchen or something like that. And I was listening to like a podcast, and I was like about to I was taking out the trash or something like that. And then a random thought kind of popped into my head as I'm like recycling my bottles. And the thought was something to the effect of, if you want the world to be clean, right, start by cleaning your own like front porch, right? And so it's like, if you be the change you want to see. But here's the thing. The fact of the matter stands is that the majority, like, let's just be real. Just by you being a good person, you're not going to change 8 billion people or 7 billion people, whatever the fucking number is right now. Is it fair for you to take on that kind of responsibility, right? Like, we are programmed with this idea that, you can save the world, right? I guess we're all just like Captain fucking Planet. But is that fair, right? So am I cleaning my porch because I'm like trying to save the world? Or am I cleaning my porch because like I just want my porch to be clean? So you got to ask yourself why you're doing certain things. Because if you're cleaning your front porch because you're hoping that by you cleaning your porch, you set the standard for the entire world to sort of see what you're doing and follow suit, you're playing a fruitless game, because what's going to end up happening is you're going to get upset. Like, you don't need that kind of pressure, because it doesn't matter how clean your lawn is. Like, there will be some people who see your beautiful lawn and then still like mess their shit up. And there's nothing you can do to control it, because there have existed, monks. We've had people who have been like really sweet people, really kind people. But that hasn't, we had literally, if you believe in the Bible, you have like Yeshua, right? Who came through and was like, don't be dicks, love each other, right? Like, if anybody was, cleaning his front porch, it was him. He was loving, he was kind, literally came to fucking die for people. And he like literally was like, I am the child of God. I am here to whatever the fuck, right? And then after doing all of that, still got killed, and then we're still like, and then imagine all of the crazy shit that happened even immediately after, like, he died, like the witch trials, like, it's almost like things got worse. You can't make people clean their front porch by you cleaning your front porch. If you want your front porch to be clean, then you clean your front porch, right? I'm trying to recycle a bottle because in my mind, I'm hearing that be the change that you want to see. Okay, but that's magical thinking. By thinking that, okay, if I recycle this plastic bottle, I've made a difference. There's one change, that's made in the world. Cool, but that's not going to take care of, like, the billions of people who aren't going to see me taking out, like, who don't even think like that and won't ever think like that. And they're going to finish drinking their plastic, water bottles and throw that shit in, like, on the street. That is magical thinking, and it's unhealthy, right? It's the same thing of just be kind. Okay, cool. But you being kind might inspire some people to also be kind. But then there are some people who see your kindness as just a way to take advantage. And you won't be able to change their behavior by being kind. Stop trying to save the world. That is not your responsibility. Just live your life to the best of your ability. In the previous episode, I talked about our reality being a matrix. I am not here, and not only just being a matrix, but that we are the collective of an artificial superintelligence. I'm playing my part. However, I'm not here to convince billions of people that I'm right. I may be right. Intuitively, it feels right. It is not my part. It's not my place to convince 7 billion people. I'm not going to be able to do that. So to get upset when people just say stupid things, right, is a waste of energy. It's not for them. If I say, hey, if we're in a prison and I say, hey, I've got a way to get out of this prison. And I do, right? And I'm saying I have 100%, like, I can get us out of this prison. And then people come through and they're like they're prisoners too. And then they're saying, no, you don't. You're wrong. It's not my point or my place to convince the people telling me that I'm wrong, that I'm right. I know that I'm right. So this beacon, the message that I put out isn't to get everybody out of the prison. It is to find the people who want to get out. So for you, the sake of your mental health, the best approach is find your people. You can't save everybody. You can't get everybody out. And you'll be able to tell, it's okay. You don't have to convince everybody. Even Superman really only could work in, like, Gotham. Or wait, was he in Gotham City? Where the fuck he was from? Smallville to, where was he? Doesn't matter. Let's go with Batman. Either analogy, okay? You know what I'm saying. God damn it. He was centrally located. He was just trying to fix his city. But at the end of the day, you're basically a god. And yet you've been sort of relegated to just playing the role of a fucking cop and enforcing bullshit laws. That's what he essentially became. Because he was operating in the mindset of, well, I've got to save the world. No, you don't. Live your life. Find like-minded people. Connect with them. Make friends. if you do have a way out, save the people you can. And leave the rest to fate or determinism, whatever the fuck. I've been really sitting with the idea, like, man, we really struggle in life because we think we're in control. So we're constantly trying to control things. But obviously, if you can control shit, your life would be better than it is now. I mean, let's be real. If you were in control of your life, think about all the fucked up shit that has happened to you. I'm walking around. Your life would be better. Your life would be certainly different. I don't know about better, but it would certainly be different. So at what point do you realize that you're not controlling much here? And then I used to even say the only thing you can control is yourself, but then you get sick. So you can't even control that. I mean, you can eat well. You know what I mean? You can avoid sick people in the case of COVID. But I heard a fucked up story, man. There was this person who, they were in their 70s and they were riding their bike, exercising, riding their bicycle on the road, and they got hit by a drunk driver 10 o'clock in the fucking morning. If that's not some shit that makes you stop and realize what the fuck? Because a person who is biking at that age is they're trying to preserve their life, and yet the very thing that they were doing to preserve their life is what essentially led to them being killed. Sit with that. You think that person chose this? That's how their life ended. And when you sit with these thoughts, it's fuck. We think we're in control, but we're not. And then what I said was people were saying well, God, that's awful. Then it's just the futility of life. Then how do you function? I don't know what to tell you, but I would rather not pretend that I'm in control here, because it's a lie. I'm only deceiving myself, and I don't like illusions, right? I don't like to be lied to. I'm not going to lie to myself. There's something to be said about I heard this quote. It says, the only freedom that a puppet has is that they learn to love their strings. And it's bittersweet, right? How to learn to love your strings. So, but even that within itself is it's a sense of well, fuck. If this is the situation that I'm in, there's only so much I can control. Might as well just sit back and enjoy the show. What will be, will be. Sometimes I feel sometimes I have more control of my ego. At least I feel I do. Who knows? And other times I don't. But what I'm finding is more and more that by just leaning into these things, I'm just going, okay, it's fine. What can I do? I do what I can. I try to be aware as much as possible, but I'm not going to be 100% successful. I wonder if there isn't some sort of freedom in that, right? Let's say my art. I used to try to paint, try being the operative word, and my work wasn't as good until I stopped trying and just let it be. Sometimes there's some shit you just got to let it be. Stop trying to force stuff and just let it be. Sometimes you wake up and yes, we have like the Sam, I forget what his name is, Sam or whatever. He wrote the book, Free Will, Sam Harris. And he says, like, there is no free will. You just wake up with desires, but you don't know where these desires come from. Well, lately I've been waking up, observing these desires and just going, well, fuck it, let's go. Let's see what today brings. These are the strings. I mean, you could do the opposite, which is just leave the world, so to speak, and go sit like in a cave somewhere and just meditate. I'm not there. Maybe one day I will wake up with that desire. But even that is contingent upon me having the desire to do that. You see what I mean? Anyway, thanks for listening.